This is regarding James Morgan Burke, 04/06/1982, in a sentencing hearing for multiple charges, I believe, bigamy and firearms. Due to Mr. Burke being a danger to society and past violence with firearms and domestic abuse, and best friends he left for dead on life support and tubes attached to him, and that friend was ICU, was a Medicopter flight for life, transported to Johnson City Medical Center. That friend's name is Christopher Carter. Christopher Carter's information and screenshots of conversation were sent to Detective Mary Dexter, as well as Victim Witness Coordinator at District Attorney's Office in Barron, Wisconsin. I was also called in the court case of sexual abuse and assault regarding Mr. Burke on his daughter, my daughter, Faith Ledoux. The levels of violence in that case need to be taken into consideration. Mr. Burke has no regard for human life. He beat relentlessly his children and myself with objects, including firearms and fists. Additionally, it's imperative we do not forget the rapes at the hand of a father she loved. This affected her. Faith Ledoux was always... Life, in many ways, has been destroyed. Her youth, in many ways, was destroyed. A chance at a future. I've often told District Attorney and Detective Mary Dexter to push for the greatest amount of years behind bars as possible for Mr. Burke's sentencing. He is dangerous enough to violently rape and impregnate a pudgy, loving, sweet child of whom he called his own at the tender age of 10. He beats his wives and children. His ex-girlfriend, Sarah Brewer, who dated him before I married him, sent me screenshots of Mr. Burke's conversation on Facebook Messenger. Mr. Burke lies about his employment status and admits bigamy and casually shrugs it off, and how the affects his children that he beat, raped, and tortured, and myself. James has a huge criminal record in Sullivan County, Tennessee, and Bristol, Tennessee, and Virginia, not to mention what God above has seen him do. He thinks he has gotten away with this for my children's sake and society's. Please sentence Mr. Burke to the maximum and do consecutive. I also want to state that Mr. Burke has been found guilty of numerous domestic violences, built a bomb in Cumberland, Wisconsin, and found guilty of child abuse. His ex-girlfriend, Sarah Brewer, in Bristol, Tennessee, messages me often speaking about acts of violence and how dangerous Mr. Burke is. He once hit her in the ear so hard she thought she had lost her hearing. He is a classic sociopath exhibiting lifelong misbehavior filled with lies and manipulation, extremely charming, arrogant, and seriously dangerous, pathological liar, and incapable of love. Therefore, obviously, he's a danger to society. He does not respect human life. This was just one more slap in the face when Barron County did state that they might let the sentences be reduced for a plea on our road to justice for my children and myself. My stepson Brandon realizes ultimately that God has justice under control. My daughter Faith, however, has suffered severe depression and been diagnosed with anxiety and post-traumatic stress disorder, and attempt suicide has even been institutionalized. She went from making straight A's at private Montessori and Catholic schools to exhibiting terrible grades and attitude. She is tortured by the rapes, by the firearms that Mr. Burke used to torture our family, and the thoughts of violence and child abuse. She endured seeing her mother getting beat relentlessly, and Brandon, her brother. It has taken a toll on all of our lives. My daughter was a loving, giving child before this happened, and now she is tortured by it. Mr. Burke has tried to take away our lives with the bigamy, resulting in upset to our credit, upset to our reputation, and family and friends not understanding the concept of bigamy. I provided Assistant District Attorney Mr. John O'Boyle multiple court documentation and paperwork from DHS and how this has affected our children. James committed bigamy. We had approved ICPs, I believe they call them, approved home studies. We were approved for adoption for David Brandon Burke. We often call him Brandon in these court papers because We just call him Brandon. My daughter and I were actually in court on February 14th, which is Valentine's Day this past year, 2018. I wrote a poem while the district attorney had me locked away in the victim witness room, and I was not allowed to show any of these papers. He said my information was litmus. That's a whole nother story in and of itself. But had I been able to be called back for rebuttal and taken on the stand and taken seriously, I'm sure that the judges would understand the depths and seriousness of Mr. Burke's violence. I put, today I'm here to testify in court in this little town I was trying to avoid. It happened here in my home state. You violated marriage and family with such a straight face. The falling of snow turned from breathtaking to exhausting. Mine filled up with thoughts what happened when no one was watching. Winter wonderland of beauty turned into hell. Would the scars heal any time? Only time would tell. You were the one who always protected, stood by your family when times were so stressful. What triggered a jump that to pure torture, someone so different like we'd never known. Memories of Hollywood, Hawaii, and Mexico, those were what we learned to let go. Playing in the oceans of far-off lands, no longer I wanted my heart in your hands. Trust had disappeared, and you have had time to pretend you didn't do these things that torture your head. Things so disgusting, the simple mention in words, caused a mom and daughter both to lose friends by the herds. This wasn't the first time you'd let us down. This was different, though, destined forever to frown. Some things are so horrible, only God can forgive. You made life harder to live. Each time we tried to smile, the memories crept up. Thoughts of being degraded and violated, made to feel worthless. How could a husband who carried me on his shoulders up the Hollywood sign be so cold-hearted and continually deny? God is ever present and saw each act committed without conscience. Now it's time to admit them and ask for forgiveness, for we have all sinned and done things not perfectly, but torturing your whole family with violence and rapes and beatings will leave you only one choice for where to spend eternity. May God have mercy on your soul for what you have done to Brandon, to Faith, and to me. I remember being by your side while you tried to sleep, and you woke up abruptly in panics, having vivid dreams of being chained to large stones and screaming for help in the pits of hell. If that is your fate, as you feared it would be, you'll understand more clearly what your actions and tortures have done to the children and me. Please have Mr. Burke's sentences run back to back so that he does not get credit for time served and does not just lump them all together. Thank you very much. He's a danger to society, to women, and to children. And if you do not take this seriously, he will commit acts of violence and has already admitted to me in the confides of our marriage that he has committed murder, other rapes, and other tortures. Please sentence him to the maximum sentencing and take into consideration the lives he has changed forever and the danger he is to society and his children.